Ferrari. It's an evocative name, creating mental images of speed, glamour, and scarlet red cars carrying all before them on and off the track. But here's the paradox. Despite being Formula One's most historic team, its history is riddled with failure. It has had its brief periods of dominance, but they have been exceptions, a counterpoint to decades of mediocrity, defeat, and disappointment. The story of Ferrari is not the one which the company would have you believe. Instead, it is one of stubbornness, mismanagement, and missed opportunities. Ferrari predates the Formula One era. Between the wars, Enzo Ferrari built his own racing team by running privately entered Alfa Romeos for gentlemen and racers of the age. Having built its reputation on the back of Alfa Romeo, and surviving the war relatively unscathed, Enzo Ferrari decided to enter Grand Prix racing under his own name, with the 125 racing in the 1948 Grand Prix season. When Formula One came into existence in 1950, Ferrari entered his own cars, and the company has been involved in every Formula One season since. Benefiting from the withdrawal of Alfa Romeo and Mercedes, the team was relatively successful in the first decade of the sport, with its drivers claiming 4 world championships. In the 1960s it was to claim 2 more, before entering the first of its fallow periods, after John Surtees' 1964 championship win. Despite being the largest and best-funded team in the sport, Ferrari waited 11 years for Niki Lauda to reclaim the title for the team. After Jody Scheckter's 1979 victory, there was a 21-year wait before Michael Schumacher reclaimed the title for Maranello, and as of today, the team have been waiting 18 years since Kimi Raikkonen's 2007 success. The truth is that Ferrari's reputation is built upon a handful of brief golden eras, not a sustained record of success. It is a racing team which is built around the cult of personality, something which stems from Enzo Ferrari himself, who treated his drivers with an appalling lack of care and blamed them for the team's lack of success, rather than addressing the root of its issues. It's a problem which clearly still exists today. Ferrari chairman John Elkann recently told his drivers Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton to quit whining and concentrate on their driving. This automatic reaction of the team to blame its drivers is entirely at odds with the performance of the drivers it has hired. Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time world champion who remains one of the fastest drivers in the sport even as he approaches the twilight of his career. The problems he faces are not of his making, nor is he the first to suffer at Ferrari's hands. 4-time world champions Alain Prost and Sebastian Vettel were never able to wrestle Ferrari from its slump. 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso had no more success. Ferrari is responsible for the underwhelming achievements of magnificent drivers like Gilles Villeneuve and Jean Alesi, and Charles Leclerc is well on his way to joining this group. The problem at Ferrari is not, and never has been, the quality of drivers it employs. Ferrari's problems lie elsewhere, and they are legion. Perhaps Ferrari's biggest problem is the revolving door approach to team management, which has seen leaders come and go all too frequently. These changes have as much to do with internal politics as they do with measuring performance, and the instability they create has done much to drive the blunders which have dogged the team at the track, and their impact off the track has led to some quite appalling race cars on it. Since Jean Todt left Ferrari at the end of its most recent period of success, it has been burning through team principles at a ridiculous rate. Stefano Domenicali, Todt's successor, claimed Ferrari's last constructors' title in 2008 and came close to carrying the team to drivers' titles on 3 occasions. But he was forced out of the team after the first engine of the hybrid era was uncompetitive in a period dominated by Mercedes. His replacement, Marco Mattiacci, wasn't even given a year to prove himself as his attempts to modernise the team and its corporate culture met with strong internal resistance. Maurizio Arrivabene, who replaced him, was no more able to resolve the internal conflicts which hampered performance and slowed development, and despite driving the team to its most competitive showing in almost a decade, was removed from his role by Ferrari's management. Promoting from within, engineer Mattia Binotto took over the reins next. However, despite the work he did to align the technical side of the operation, his attempts to protect team members after mistakes were seen as a weakness, and he was forced to resign. Current incumbent in the role, Frederick Vasseur, came with a reputation for discipline and was another attempt to restructure the team. To date, his tenure has been no more successful than his predecessors. Ferrari's golden periods are part of Formula One folklore and helped to make legends. Alberto Ascari claimed 2 titles in imperious fashion in the early 50s, whilst titles for Fangio and Hawthorn meant that Ferrari drivers had effectively dominated that decade. However, Ferrari was slow to adopt rear-engine cars, even after Cooper had demonstrated that they were the future of Formula One as early as 1957. In a demonstration of Enzo Ferrari's stubbornness and intransigence, he called the idea of a rear-engine Formula One car illogical and swore that he would never put the horse behind the cart, as that would be an offence to engineering purity. Misguided by Hawthorn's 1958 championship win into believing his front-engine cars were still superior, Ferrari was the last team on the grid to move to rear-engine cars, and the momentum the company had built in the early years was stalled. When the switch eventually came, Ferrari reclaimed the title in dominant fashion, with the team winning 5 of the 8 races of the 1961 season with the new 156 Sharknose, including a Grand Prix debut victory for Giancarlo Baghetti, the only driver in history to do so. Phil Hill and Wolfgang von Trips battled for the title, with the result going Hill's way after his teammate was killed in a horrific accident in the penultimate race at Monza, with his car crashing into the crowd on the approach to the Parabolica, killing 14 spectators. What should have been the beginning of another era of success was instead the beginning of a political battle which would almost destroy Ferrari. Enzo's management style was becoming more draconian and its results more brutal. Causing more trouble was the vesting of some of his power in his wife, Laura, who would prowl the factory telling engineers how to do their jobs, despite having no technical knowledge or skills whatsoever. The engineers revolted, staging a walkout over their treatment, and Ferrari responded by sacking them all. In what became known as the Palace Revolt, Ferrari had comprehensively shot himself and his team in the foot. Only one qualified engineer remained at Ferrari, a 27-year-old Mauro Forgieri. Forgieri took over car design, but it took several years for the impact of the Palace Revolt to be resolved, and more than a decade before it would deliver a sustained period of competitiveness. In 1964, John Surtees claimed the driver's title for Ferrari, winning by a single point after championship leader Graham Hill was punted out of the final race by Surtees' teammate Lorenzo Bandini. Of the first 15 drivers' titles, 6 had been won by Ferrari drivers. In the following 60 years, the team has claimed just 9 more. Following Surtees' victory, things fell apart for Ferrari. Enzo's autocratic leadership and overconfidence in his own engineering skills meant the team was outmanoeuvred on all fronts. Changes in the technical and management side of the team, wrought by Enzo's personality clashes, meant continued reshuffles, and Surtees abandoned the team after rowing with team manager Eugenio Dragoni. Ferrari believed that the best way to get the best from his drivers was to pit them against each other, in and out of the cockpit. He was convinced that if his cars weren't winning, it was because the drivers weren't trying hard enough, and by threatening their employment, forcing them into direct competition, and treating them like the serfs he believed them to be, he would benefit from their willingness to take greater risks and win races. In 1958, This had led to Hawthorn's title victory, at the expense of the deaths of his teammates Luigi Musso and Peter Collins. The loss of Surtees, who moved to Cooper, cost the team the 1966 title and was the start of a slide in Ferrari's fortunes. By the mid-60s, aerodynamics were becoming more important in Formula One. British teams were building small light cars which produced significant downforce, making them competitive despite an obvious power disadvantage. As with rear engines, Ferrari's stubbornness meant the team missed the boat once more. Confident in his belief that Ferrari's engines would carry all before them, he claimed that aerodynamics are for people who can't build engines. This dismissal of a significant new technology was a prime reason for the team's decade-long wait for its next driver's title. In the 3 seasons following Surtees' departure, Ferrari would win just one Grand Prix, and in 1969 its drivers would score points just 3 times in a dismal year. In 1970, Mauro Forgieri regained control of car development, as the team once more reshuffled to address its lack of success. He designed the 312B, which considered aerodynamics in its development and used a new flat 12 engine, lowering the car's centre of gravity to improve handling. Forgieri was given control of the racing team, and Enzo was distanced from day-to-day operations. Belgian driver Jackie Ickx returned to the team, and once reliability issues were resolved, put in a strong finish to the season, albeit not strong enough to prevent Lotus's Jochen Rindt being crowned Formula One's only posthumous world champion. In 1973, things were to take a further step forward when Luca Cordero di Montezemolo joined Ferrari and took the role of sporting director of the team in 1974. Together with Forgieri's engineering skills and the talent of newly signed driver Niki Lauda, Ferrari was set back on the right road. In 1974, Lauda and Ferrari were competitive, and in 1975 the Austrian became the first Ferrari driver to become world champion in more than a decade, winning 5 of the season's 13 rounds. 1976 started the same way, with Lauda claiming 5 of the first 9 races, before suffering his fiery Nürburgring accident, which allowed James Hunt to swoop in and steal the title. Ferrari's handling of Lauda's accident, and especially the treatment he received after pulling out of the season finale on the second lap, damaged the relationship between driver and team. Daniel Ordetto, who had taken over running of the team from Montezemolo, and Lauda intensely disliked each other. And even though Ordetto was by then long departed, as soon as the Austrian had clinched the 1977 title, he too left the team. In 1977, Lotus had introduced the wing car, which emphasised the importance of airflow under the car. And in 1978, when the new Lotus 79 ramped things up a notch by bringing ground effects into the sport, Ferrari wasn't able to compete. Despite Carlos Reutemann winning 4 races, he could only finish a distant third to the 2 Lotus drivers. The flat 12 Ferrari engine was the wrong configuration for a ground effect car, and the team was slow to understand this. Its low, wide layout put it directly in the area where clean airflow was necessary to maximise downforce from ground effects. In 1979, when Lotus made a mess of its new car, Jody Scheckter was able to claim the title for Ferrari after early pacesetters Ligier suffered reliability issues, and Williams required half a season to sort development niggles on its new car. Ferrari won 6 races across the season, but Williams had won 6 of the last 8 races. The writing was on the wall, and Ferrari had once more missed the boat on new technology in Formula One. In 1980, with every other team having sorted the problems of their ground effect cars, Ferrari's fall was mighty. Scheckter scored just 2 points and became the first defending world champion to fail to qualify for a Grand Prix. The 312 T5 was mostly a carryover of the previous year's championship-winning design. Its engine width precluded the effective use of ground effects, and as a result the team had to use significantly larger wings than its competitors, which made it slow in a straight line, despite its powerful 12-cylinder engine. As the team tried to resolve its issues with more power, reliability suffered, and the result was its worst ever performance across its whole time in Formula One. 10th place in the Constructors' Championship, a best result of 1/5 place, and embarrassing 14th and 19th place finishes in the Drivers' Championship. Once Ferrari accepted the depth of its problem, it moved quickly, and perhaps for the first time in its history rushed to adopt a new technology: turbocharging. Renault had brought forced induction back to Formula One in 1977 and had started to see some successes. Enzo Ferrari personally made the decision to investigate turbo engines as the next step for the team. In a shrewd move, he recruited Nicola Materazzi from fellow Fiat Group brand Lancia. Materazzi had been involved in the development of the Fulvia and Stratos rally cars, and crucially, the successful Lancia Silhouette Racer, which used a turbo engine. Taking control of engine development, Materazzi had a unit ready in record time, and at the 1980 Italian Grand Prix, the first Ferrari turbo-engined Formula One car ran in practice sessions. In 1981, Ferrari went all in on the turbo car and claimed 2 victories as a result. Teething issues with the new engine meant it was unreliable, whilst the car's chassis was far from the best. Nevertheless, Villeneuve and teammate Didier Pironi often led the field whilst the cars were running. In 1982, Pironi would surely have won the title, but for an accident in Germany which ended his career. Despite missing the last 6 races of the season, Pironi only missed out on the title by 5 points, finishing as runner-up. The season had already seen the terrible death of Villeneuve, fallout from yet another political battle within the team. During 1981, when the team was developing the new turbo engine, it desperately needed more running time during races to iron out its technical problems. Villeneuve's flamboyant driving style and win-or-bust attitude meant that he often overdrove the car, crashing out of races early on and depriving the team of development mileage. New boy Pironi, on the other hand, proved to be about as fast as Villeneuve and much more reliable, failing to finish only when technical problems struck. Entering the 1982 season, the team was split in 2 internally. There were those who were loyal to Villeneuve and those who wanted to focus on Pironi. At the 1982 San Marino Grand Prix, the 2 drivers fought for victory, with Pironi winning out on the last lap. Villeneuve was incensed, believing that victory had been stolen from him. Meanwhile, Pironi was adamant that no instructions were given to allow Villeneuve to win. When the team refused to confirm either driver's version of events, Villeneuve swore never to speak to his teammate again, and crashed fatally in qualifying for the next race, trying in vain to better Pironi's qualifying time. In 1983, Ferrari's drivers Tombe and Arnoux were involved in a season-long battle for the title with Renault and Brabham, losing out on the championship to Nelson Piquet in the final race. The Ferrari engine and car were the class of the field in 1982 and 1983. However, terrible accidents had denied them the title in 1982, and in 1983 they suffered as Goodyear's crossply tyres were outclassed by Michelin's radials whenever the weather turned warm. And then things went south, and quickly. New regulations introduced in 1984 restricted the amount of fuel which cars could use, and the prodigious power of the Ferrari turbo engine was blunted to mitigate its similarly prodigious thirst. Over the next 5 seasons, the team won just 6 races, including the 1988 Italian Grand Prix, after Senna's McLaren had been punted out of the lead. Coming just weeks after Enzo Ferrari's death, it was an emotional victory for all of Italy. Ferrari hired first Nigel Mansell and then Alain Prost in an attempt to turn things around, and whilst Prost came close to beating Senna to the title in his first year with the team, by the end of 1991 he had been sacked for criticising the team and its car. In truth, Prost's dismissal was as much a result of a running battle with Cesare Fiorio over the direction and development of team and car. Prost was seen as a threat to Fiorio's power base, and his removal was inevitable after failure to secure the title in 1990. Once more, politics had wrought destruction on the team, and Ferrari was in the doldrums. From Prost's last victory in Spain in 1990, it went 58 races before winning again, when Berger triumphed in Germany in 1994, nearly 4 full years later. Signs of a recovery only started appearing when Michael Schumacher was recruited from Benetton by new team boss Jean Todt. Together they persuaded Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne to leave England and join the team. After Honda withdrew from Formula One, Todt also recruited a number of their engineers, notably Osamu Goto, who led the rebuild of the engine department. After decades of being an all-Italian institution, powered by Italian pride, Ferrari had finally transformed into a modern Formula One team. Led by a Frenchman, with 2 Englishmen responsible for design and engineering, an engine department led by Japanese engineers, and a German driver, Ferrari began the most dominant period in Formula One history. In 1999, it claimed its first constructors' title in 16 years. And then, in 2000, Michael Schumacher became the first Ferrari driver to win the World Championship for 21 years. The German went on to win the title 5 times in succession, an unprecedented achievement, whilst the team claimed 6 consecutive titles. 2 years after claiming his 7th World Championship, Schumacher would retire as the most successful driver Ferrari had ever known. Even Schumacher's departure was politically driven, as he was forced out as Montezemolo sought to wrest control of the team back from Ross Brawn, who had been the ultimate architect of its success. Following Schumacher's retirement, Ferrari won the Constructors' title again in 2008, as well as being credited with the 2007 title, when McLaren were disqualified from the championship for espionage. Kimi Raikkonen won the World Championship in 2007 and remains the last Ferrari driver to do so, 18 and counting years later. A strong, successful Ferrari is an important part of Formula One, even if those periods when it is successful have been historically few and far between. Some of the blame for Ferrari's current fallow period can be found in 2 changes in the sporting regulations. Firstly, in 2009, when the FIA banned in-season testing and restricted this to a number of official sessions. This was a particular problem for Ferrari, whose Fiorano test track gave them the ability to develop upgrades and test them much faster than other teams, who needed to hire circuits to test their developments. Hand in hand with this limitation came controls on spending and cost caps. Ferrari have traditionally been Formula One's richest and best funded team. Enzo Ferrari only started building road cars to ensure that he had money to go racing. Fiat, which took ownership of Ferrari in 1969, had deep pockets when it came to the Scuderia, well aware of how racing success reflected on its road cars. Spending big money was always part of the Ferrari DNA, so cost caps was something which adversely affected the team. Whether the new regulations coming in 2026 will allow Ferrari to lead from the front once more remains to be seen. Competition will be as strong as ever, and it's likely that whichever team steals a march in 2026 will carry that advantage for several seasons. Ferrari may know whether its drought will continue as soon as the end of the Australian Grand Prix. For all that money, history and glamour, Ferrari's adventures in Formula One have been a failure, not the success the publicists would have you believe. The racing team exists today solely to put the shine on the cars it sells to the public, and to give the business a hook to sell its lifestyle products. For Ferrari's legendary tifosi, who are a more important part of Formula One than the team these days, and those who love Formula One for its sporting heritage rather than its financial health, it is important for Ferrari to be competitive. The words of Sebastian Vettel, admonishing reporter Lee Mackenzie, are perhaps the best way to sum up the importance of Ferrari in Formula One. Everyone is a Ferrari fan. Even if they say they are not, they are Ferrari fans. I don't think he was wrong.